This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the all-in-one website platform for entrepreneurs to stand out and succeed online. Hello, welcome again to my library floor. There's been multiple videos that I filmed on this floor, and today I'm actually going to start with dealing with this pile because we're going to be talking about reading FOMO, being overwhelmed with how much you have to read, and why I don't care that much. But we'll talk about it and how I got to that place in my life because I wasn't always that way, and I'm going to do that as I finally organise this pile around me because there are spaces for them, I just haven't organised the books and categorised them, so that's where we are. So, many book lovers are plagued by this intense anxiety that never seems to go away, no matter how much they are reading or how old they get. And that fear is that they are not going to read all of the books that they want to in their lifetime. I've received many messages, particularly over the past couple of months, so clearly maybe there's a wave of a recent reading anxiety from subscribers asking me to address this immense anxiety that they have over reading. And I should acknowledge that this anxiety over reading takes many, many forms. The most obvious one is the Goodreads one, the challenge that people give themselves every year, and then if they don't reach that goal at the end of the year of reading, say, 100 books, they beat themselves up, or they cram in as many books as possible in the final couple of weeks or months just to say that they reached the target that they set for themselves because they don't want to break the target. Or there's another kind of anxiety, and that is the so overwhelmed with the anxiety of all the books one hasn't read. Some people choose to purge all the books that they own, or a large proportion of the books they own. They cull the books from their home as though they're like dealing with the overpopulation of an invasive species, like get them out as soon as possible. And here's my argument. I don't think that really solves the problem here, because that solution relies on the person to simultaneously announce to themselves alongside that cull that they are never going to buy any other books again. Or only read the books that they own, or only read books from a library, which isn't an impossible life goal in any way. It's not an impossible way to live. It's what many people do. But let's be honest, it's not usually the reality of the book lovers who got themselves into a position where they need to cull a load of books. They're not normal people, but I can say that as one of those people. If you're someone who gets anxiety over not being able to read anything to the point that you cull a load of books, you're also probably not likely going to be the person who is never going to buy another book ever again. Just good to say it. I found my book club book. I am part of a book club that just with my friends, and they always pick books that I can't stand the sound of, and this is the one they've chosen, which is The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. It's not something I would ever have picked up. I'm not a fan of epistolary novels, let alone ones that look like that. But you know what? I can get deceived. You know, I may love this book. The Eleanor Ferrante, My Brilliant Friends series really blew my mind. So I'm clearly shouldn't judge a book by its cover, even though I always do. And here's my insight. I don't think people are frightened of not reading enough books, because my theory, my logic is that what you're really frightened of is death. Your death, more specifically, or their death, if I'm speaking about someone else engaged with this. Because think about it, we can do all the fancy maths. We can do about, if I read one book a week for a whole year, then I'll read 52 books by the end of the year. If I want to read 100 books by the end of the year, I should be reading at least 2 books a week to make it, 104 books at the end of the year. And then if I carry on that mathematical equation for the next 50 years of my life, I will read 5,000 books. And yes, that mathematics is accurate, but also deeply flawed, because it assumes that we are blessed with 50 more years of our life to accommodate those goals. And if my discussion of memento mori is making you uncomfortable, excellent and doing a good job. Also, welcome to my channel. I talk about death a lot here. When I hear people talk about not reading all the books, my first instinct is you're not actually anxious about not reading all the books you want to. You're anxious over the lack of certainty you have over the length of your future. And as such, the number of unread books around you, or maybe on your wish list or on your e-reader, may be a morbid metric symbolising how many days or hours you have left on this earth. And your brain can't comprehend that. No human brain can comprehend it. So it converts that to a fear that is far more tangible subject. And in this case, it's books, because we're nerds and we do that. Let's get the hard truth out of the way. The truth is that there's no reason for you to be anxious at all about the subject, because it's a fact. Being anxious about a fact is a complete waste of energy. You will never read all the books you want to in your lifetime. You will not live long enough to read every book that you want to, or that you would ever possibly read. UNESCO estimates that 2.2 million new titles are published every year. Now, even if you want to add 10 of those new titles to your wish list, well, there we go. It's just going to keep growing, isn't it? So unless your goal is to only read, I don't know, the Harry Potter series, but I doubt it is, I bet you want to read every book you want to read before you die, and you're not going to do that. Sorry, that's the reality. And it's okay to grieve that reality, but there's no use being upset by it or plagued by the anxiety, because it's just a statement of fact. It'd be like getting upset that you found out that plants need water to live, or that if you drop a book in a puddle, the pages will get wet and they'll crinkle. You can't undo that. That's just the reality of it. Whoopsie daisy. But before we go any further, I'd like to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, which is Squarespace. Because whether you're just starting out or managing a growing brand, Squarespace makes it so easy for you to create a beautiful website, engage with your audience, and sell anything from products to content to time, all in one place and all on your terms. As I've talked about extensively, the end goal for me is to create an academic community for people who are independent scholars, and I can do all of that on my Squarespace website, who's seen all sides of my online evolution, because I started off using them when I was just a blogger back in the day. And on my Squarespace website, I can sell anything. I can sell online courses or blogs and videos and memberships, and purchases could be anything from a one-time fee to subscription access. And then when it comes to evolving my business, I can make smarter business decisions with Squarespace's intuitive built-in analytics tools, which allows me to review my website traffic or learn where to focus engagement or track revenue from my bookings and invoices or product sales, all from one place. So if that sounds interesting to you, check out squarespace.com for a free 14-day trial. And then when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Lady of the Library to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. And I think part of the hurdle people need to cross when overcoming this anxiety is to evaluate how they actually view books. Because it's very likely that they are imposing meaning onto books that isn't there in reality. And the removal of those beliefs will make it actually a much easier statistic to stomach, or perhaps even get over, and you'll be much happier as a result. I mean, people will always project a lot of meaning onto books, and that reveals a lot more about the person and their mindset, and maybe their underlying insecurities than anything else. So, I mean, take the books behind me, for example. I get a lot of comments about how many books are in my library. For some people, this is absolute hell. These are mountains of what basically embodiments of overwhelm and anxiety. They symbolise a massive project, basically a to-do list, all objects on a to-do list. They are tasks to get done, and living or being in a sort of environment would make them very unhappy and anxious, and they're likely to be the people that would cull books if they could. You know, just like, get rid of them, I don't want to see them ever again. And then there's another type of person. You know, there are people, for others, where it's easier for them to distance themselves from this reading anxiety. And they do that by stating that these books are just props. You know, they're just unused artifacts by a crazy person that symbolise status and wisdom that the person does not have. And they come to that conclusion either because they're insecure with their own relationship with reading, or they're actually just projecting their own employment of books onto other people because they're insecure about the fact that they use books that way. And a really easy way to evaluate if you are someone who is projecting meaning onto books is to look at your own books. So if you have physical books or an ebook collection on your phone or your tablet, evaluate what you feel. Like, are you someone who feels shame and overwhelm and guilt? And what does that say about you? Do you think that you haven't read enough, that you're too dumb? Whatever thoughts may come into your head. Now, think of a pile of books that you see in the background of a professor's office, or a professor on TV, like a fake one, like an actor, in its study. Do you impose meaning onto those books? Like, do you immediately think that the professor is more intelligent or sophisticated? Or do you think they're pretentious? Do you impose a meaning onto that setting, those books, even if you can't read the titles on the spines that are on the shelves? But now think about yourself in another area where you're surrounded by a lot of books that you may never read or never be interested in, like a public library or an academic library. And then think about the books that you see at your friend's house on their shelves. Now, does your perception of what those books mean in each of those environments change according to the environment? And do you ascribe meaning to those books and your relationship with them, and even the people utilising them around you? Because very likely you do. I think most of us do. And there is the rub, because the facts have remained the same. They're just books. They may be different types of books, but that doesn't really mean anything other than what they are, because they're different types of books, but you can't see the titles of most of them, or you don't know the titles of most of them. You may glance around, make it a vibe, but they're still just books, and because you don't know the distinctive details of each book, the meaning you're projecting is entirely your own. Ooh, a translated fiction. I've got too many piles starting up around here. And I've noticed this because sometimes when people come to visit me, they look around the house and they ask me if I'm not overwhelmed and anxious by all of these books. And I'm honest, I say, yes, sometimes I am. Sometimes I have those moments, but I have to remind myself, they're just books. Some of them will play a role in my PhD, some of them will play a role in my work, but at the end of the day, they're just objects. They're symbolic of a deeper fear. They're symbolic of a fear of my PhD. They're symbolic of a fear of my work. They're actually not the problem. They're not tasks that I need to do. And they're certainly not a countdown to how many days or years I have me left on this earth, because we can never predict that. And yes, I'm a bit of a scatterbrained kind of person. I read what I want when I want to. And sometimes I only need a chapter from a book. There's a book over there that I realise I've only read 3 chapters of, but they're the only 3 essays I needed from the whole textbook, but I only could access the physical textbook, so I had to get that. There are other books that I will completely abandon halfway through and then come back years later, and just finish off the rest of it. And there's some books that I basically tear apart because I've reread it over and over and over again so many times that the pages have come out and I've had to go buy another copy, because whilst my notes are in that copy, the original, I need to have a safety backup in case I do lose a page. But at the end of the day, it's not that deep. They're just books. The projection I put onto them, the anxiety I feel around them, is entirely my own. And obviously, I'm not saying that books don't mean anything to me. Obviously, they do. They mean a bloody lot to me. But my goal in life isn't to fit as many books into my life as possible for the sake of being able to say that I read a certain number of books in my life, or I read certain titles of books because I was expected to read those books. My goal in life is to hone the skill of being able to selectively choose what books are worth my finite attention. Because I can't control the finitude of my attention, but I can control what I give to it. Because let's face it, not all books are useful, not all books are good, and I don't have an infinite amount of free time, let alone time in my life, to give to bad literature or bad and unhelpful books. Thus, I reserve what I actually have for the books that are so interesting that they change my mind for the better, or they give me a more rounded understanding of what I'm researching. Weird interjection here. I went down a rabbit hole the other day and discovered this lady, Vanessa Place, and I have no idea how I discovered Vanessa Place. She's a very controversial figure, and I became fascinated with her. And I was like, now I just need to read everything about her, because I just came across her work, and she's really controversial and quite bizarre. And now I got this collection of her non-fiction. I was like, I have to read it. I'm obsessed. If anyone knows anything about Vanessa Place, please let me know. Her books are really hard to come by. I had to get all these secondhand. Someone sold one of her books on Vinted, and I was really eager for it, and I bought it, and then they didn't send me the book, and I got refunded, and I'm really bloody upset by it. Anyway, moving on. I say this as someone who's very aware that there are a lot of people, my future husband included, that will never leave a book unfinished. No matter how much they hate it, no matter how bored they are by it. And you know what? That's their choice. They want to do that. Absolutely fine and dandy. Good on you. For me, that commitment makes as much sense as finishing a meal that tastes disgusting or making you feel sick. Because if you're not enjoying a meal or getting any beneficial nutrients from it in any way, why on earth would you eat it? Why would you eat it all? There's more food in this world to eat. And then they say to me, well, you have to finish a book to be able to have an opinion on it. Again, I protest. Because no, if I took a bite out of a cake and it was absolutely disgusting, I wouldn't be gaslit by other people telling me that I couldn't have an opinion on the flavour or taste of the cake because I didn't eat the whole thing. I only ate a bit of it, so my opinion is flawed. No, it was disgusting. I can see it's disgusting. I can taste it's disgusting. And I'm not going to torture myself by eating the whole cake just to validate my opinion to other people. It's foul. Ooh, this is useful. I've been looking for this. You go here. Life is short, and we never know how short that's going to be, actually. It could be really, really bloody short. So would you rather be someone who read 100 books in a year, but only liked 40 of them? Or would you rather be someone who read only 40 books a year, but loved 36 of them? and then the other 4 were fine. It's all down to personal choice at the end of the day, but for me, I'd rather enjoy the time that I spend with literature. End of. I don't care if I have a complete idea of every single book, particularly if it's a bad book. I don't really care to. What will I benefit? Like nutritious value? No. Will I get better ideas? No. Like it's a crap book. I'm not going to read it any further. You see, I'd rather feel alive and enthusiastic about being part of this world that's overflowing with things to know and the books worth reading than slogging through bad or mediocre texts just to say that I read it completely. Okay. That doesn't get me anywhere, does it? So really, if you have reading anxiety, my only advice is this, is to remind yourself that you don't need to be the person who has read everything. You should instead strive to become the person who has loved the things that they actually chose to read. Because believe it or not, a finite reading life isn't a tragedy. Rather, it's what makes choosing meaningful. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it with my chaos. I can carry on organising this. I need to scan all of my books though. Though my lovely fiance has created more shelves outside in the entrance hall, which is where all these books are going. But I need to categorise them so I make sure I know where things are. Because believe it or not, this library is organised. I know where everything is. And whilst some of it's half read, most of it's all like bloody half read, I tend to buy books because I need a chapter from it. Or, I mean, not with the fiction books, but I haven't read fiction for a long time and enjoyed it. I'm trying to get back into it, but I think the past 4 years with PhD, I'm sort of been in non-fiction headspace. It's not easy for me to turn on the fiction brain, I'm not going to lie. So that's why I've been really not enjoying my book club, because I'm just the resident bitch that comes in and bitches about the book because I didn't like it, which is hey-ho, my kind of vibe. But I hope you enjoyed today's video. We're going into my favourite time of year, so look out. I've got a fun video coming up about what I'm going to study next term for myself for work, and we're going into the good grungy autumnal macabre part of literature, which is what I love. It's a season for it. I'm really excited for it. If you have any requests, as always, leave them down below. I have a Google form you can send them to. Thank you as always to my patrons for making this possible, and my top tier patrons. I have Eric Taylor, Yvonne and Yvonne, Jenny Edivane, Wee Lauren, That Darn Cat, Gil the Gilded Dragon, Joshua Heredia, Wee Lauren, Holly's Autistic, Lady of the Labyrinth, Andy Bazil, and Nicholas Reed. Thank you ever so much as always, and I hope you are happy and healthy. And remember, books save lives, so keep reading selectively. Not all of the books, just selectively, okay? Good.